I guess the best way to describe it, Les, to be honest with you, is I've taken that 25 years in a truck, all the mistakes I've made, some things that I was successful on, and then the last 10 years or so, not quite 10 years, of being a national technical trainer at a very high level for two global companies. Quite honestly, I've got a lot of material. So I've got start out with the refrigeration cycle and understanding margins, understanding inventory, understanding just the small things that a lot of people take for granted, but not everybody's blessed with. If you look at the heat, I know what it's like in 90. You all know what it's like in 90 some degree weather. Nobody's nice when they don't have air conditioning.
Right.
So you have to learn how to defuse that at the counter, because they're getting yelled at by Mrs. Jones, and that's not a fun place to be. I was a service manager for 8.5 years, and I've told a lot of people that was my 2-year degree that I didn't get in real life. And I learned a lot about people and how they can go without heat overnight. Oh no, just put us on the list tomorrow, but they cannot go without air conditioning. It is brutal.
Welcome to Chill Under Pressure. I'm Adam.
I'm Les.
I'm Don.
So, Don, you've had a long background in the HVAC industry. How did you get into this? Where did you start? And kind of walk us through your career. And like I mentioned in the intro here before we started, that you had put out a LinkedIn post that really walked through that, and it was really interesting. So I think it's a great place to start.
Yeah, it's a long story, but I'll condense it. And I didn't think anything of it, to be quite honest with you, not to get off topic here, but I was having dinner with a friend, a longtime friend in the industry, and he was an outside sales guy. So we were having dinner, and we were eating there and conversing, and he said, "How'd you get into it?" Just like you just asked me. And I started to tell him, and I got about 10 or 15 minutes into it, and he goes, "That's a good story." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "That's a great story." He said, "You ought to tell Pete that story or a part of it in every training class," which I started to do, which did open people's eyes. Like, wow, I could knock it out of the park one day. Not that I'm anything special, but I'm saying the sky's the limit. So I started out, I was a laid off union steelworker just down the street from where I'm sitting right now in my hometown. And they closed the doors. There was almost 2,000 people in the plant, and we're not that big of a county. It devastated us. We were the highest unemployment in the county at the time, and the state of Ohio was in the highest unemployment in the nation. So it wasn't a good situation. So jobs were hard to get. I answered an ad for a Lennox dealer down the street here, and they chose me. They hired two of us, and I found out later they were going to let one of us go, and the other guy just didn't show up to work for a while. So I got lucky. So anyways, I started out as a grunt, like we all do. I was getting to crawl spaces. I was getting hit with the cobwebs. I was getting muddy. I was staying late, digging trenches. We did electrical, plumbing, and heating. So I was doing different things and wearing different hats. And I think I hired in, well, it's right around the corner. It was April Fool's Day. It was my start day, believe it or not. So then the spring,
I wondered if it was real.
Yeah. For one of you.
It's funny you said that, because I've told other people and talking with them, like, so I didn't know if this was going to turn out to be a good thing or a bad thing. So then spring hit was my point, and then we started working on new construction sites on and off, and there was just something about smelling the sawdust of a new construction and all the camaraderie and the cords and all the power tools going off. And I just adapted really well. And before that, I put myself through a refrigeration course. So I was going to school 2 nights a week and learning, and I just kept getting bumped up. I got my own van. You know how big of a deal that is back in the day, probably still is. And then I got a helper or apprentice, if you will. And then from there, I went to another company. I started out as a lead person there. I was in charge of all the new construction at the time. And then I went to Fort Wayne. I'm right on the state line of Ohio and Indiana, by the way. So I commuted there for 25 years. Because of my experience in the past, they let me, I had to do some paperwork. They let me bypass the 4-year apprentice program and then take the journeyman's test, which I passed. And then once you had that in the county there, because it was a very hard test. I mean, it's under the international mechanical codes, but they tweak it the way they like it. So it's not a give me. I've heard of people flunking it 4 or 5 times. Not that I'm a brain surgeon, but I passed that. But that meant more money. And when you had that, companies really sought out after you because, again, there wasn't enough of us to go around. You have to have a journeyman on every job site, and then they're only allowed to have so many apprentices applied to that one journeyman. So, and they're very strict. These guys drive around all day and unmarked cars, and their little computers like, oh, he's working there. They pull a permit, and I mean, they're really good at their job. So I got tired of getting flagged down, and it didn't take long, but I got it. So then someone took notice of me at one company, and he came out on a job site one day, and it was somebody I'd met. I was actually subcontracting for them, doing some houses on the weekends for him to make extra money. And he said, I'm going to start a service department, and I was hoping you would be the service manager. And I thought, well, this was moving pretty fast, and I was getting not really overwhelmed, but I was happy with what I was doing. Like we all get comfortable, I think all along the way I was comfortable, but I just went and tried it. So anyways, he was doing 200 houses a year, roughing in, finish, and then 3 or 4, 5, 6 apartments, depending on what the economy was looking like. So he called me up, I think it was a week or two later. I'll never forget it. We still had Nextels. And I remember driving my van. He called me and said, hey, what's going on, Buckeye? And then he went and said, have you given it some thought? And I had, but it caught me off guard. The call did. And I said, John, I was making $17 an hour. And I said, for $1 more an hour, I'll be honest with you. I really don't want the stress. I like you and everything, but I don't want the stress. And he snapped. Now, keep in mind, I'm not his employee. I mean, I don't really know him all that well. It's not like we're best friends or anything. And he got angry with me at the Nextel. And he said, I'm not talking about $1 more an hour. I'm talking about putting you in management and never looking back. And I said, I'll take it. I mean, he just was so convincing. Like he really told me he was going to make me something, and he did. I learned a lot, 8.5 years of doing that. In fact, I loved him so much and I loved the job so much, but I got about 400 pounds and my blood pressure was through the roof. I was smoking. Stress was high level. You know how it is. I was getting calls. I was over the whole service department. So I was getting called. They were bypassing them on call lines and calling me direct and, 12 o'clock, midnight. And it was very common. Christmas morning a couple times. And getting chewed out on Christmas morning when you're with your kids and they're small isn't fun after a while. You just feel like, what am I doing this for? There's got to be a better way. So I'm a loyal person. My wife will tell you, I've been married since I was 18. That was 43 years ago. So
congratulations.
Yeah. So as my wife tells the story, is every spring and every fall, she would say, are you going to give your 2 weeks notice? And I'd said, yeah, I'm working on it. But every time spring came, we'd have an early hot summer in May, and I'd turn around to her and I was so serious. I wasn't trying to make excuses. I said, I can't leave him now. It's 92 degrees out, that's how I felt about it. So the joke is around the house is it took me 3 years to give my 2 weeks notice. And I really thought I was going to end up at Home Depot, to be quite honest with you. But we bought a lot of boxes, so I had the opportunity to go on a lot of incentive trips, if you will. So I started meeting, owners of distributors and salespeople and all that thing. So I had a few opportunities, and word got out. But anyways, a guy called me and he said, I hear you're leaving. And I said, yeah. He goes, I just don't want to ruffle John's feather, blah, blah, blah. But if you're going to leave, I'm not going to let somebody else have you. So I went into territorial management for a while, sales. And I didn't really care for it. In fact, I turned around twice in my car because my phone was ringing. It's kind of like going from not being busy to real busy as a service manager, literally having a phone up to each ear. You guys know what I'm talking about. And that's what it was like at the position. We didn't have a project manager. So it wasn't that I was anything special. We ran really lean in management. There was the owner, myself, and someone else. And that was basically it. So if you've ever been in that situation and you go to something like territorial sales, now sales isn't easy, but it was a lot less stressful than what I just walked out of. And there was something about the withdrawal that made me feel almost like I wasn't needed, like no tech or nobody's calling me, like, when you going to get the heat on, or over here where the mudders are trying to, dry out the mud, and the technician going, hey, this heat, defrost board isn't working right. So that went away. So after about a month, it started weighing on me, and nobody was calling me. Nobody even knew I was here. And the lady that had the route was 2 years in the making of knowing she was retired. So she didn't really work it all that well. And it's all new to me, by the way. So now I'm in a dress shirt and khaki pants. That wasn't ever me. And so anyways, I turned around twice. And the last time I turned around, I was almost back home. I was going to call my manager and say, hey, this isn't for me. I'm not a sales guy. I'm really not. I don't like this cold calling. I don't really, people like show up and they're like, who in the heck are you? We've never even had an account with you, blah, blah, blah. And I stopped because I thought about my son, my youngest son. Something came over me that I pictured my wife's face when I told her that daddy quit his job today and doesn't have anything lined up. And that's a true story. And I thought about my youngest son, who was like a junior in high school or sophomore. And I thought, man, how responsible am I to do that? You know what I mean? But that's how frustrated I was. And that very day, somebody contacted me on my phone and wanted a quote on something. And I quickly pulled off the side of the road of my iPad and I got into our system and I quoted it. And it's like, okay, when can you get it to me? And it's like, it just shot momentum in my face, man. And that started to snowball. And believe it or not, that account went from red to black pretty quick. And the reason the contractors liked me, because quite a few of them told me throughout my career there that I was the only one they allowed to cold call, was I think they saw the cuts and the burns on my hand. I was never high pressure. I wasn't coming in like to sell you something you don't need. I always tell everybody I wasn't a good salesman, but if someone said, what do you think about this? And put a pamphlet out and it was a $5,000 Gidget or whatever. And I said, I don't know much about that, but I can tell you this is what I have in my home and it's $500. You know what I mean? And it works pretty darn good. And that's kind of how I approach things. You know what I mean? I treated it as, what I learned along the way is sales that I didn't know going into it. It's really about relationships. It's like you and I are talking right now. It's about caring who that person is, not just thinking about commission. Because I didn't worry about commission. If I would have worried about commission, I wouldn't have took the job. I was happy with my salary. The commission started to really blow my mind how fast you can make money like that. But that was never that was never the target. And then once I started getting into people, it was like I was filling up training classes. I was big into training, so I was always handing out flyers of something. I was constantly getting reps into the branch going, hey, I want to do training on this. I want to do training on that. And pretty much 2 or 3 weeks, the branch manager hated me because he saw it as I need to buy donuts or I need to pay for lunch. You know what I mean? But I saw it as a foot traffic and making more people communicate. I just love training. And that filled a gap for me, a void that I lost as a service manager. In fact, when I first got my first review, my manager, he said to me, he goes, well, he was not checking everything off. And he got to the training part. And he says, well, it says you got to have 2 trainings every 6 months. And he said, 1, 2, he got up to 17. He goes, you've had 17. He said, so I guess you did okay there. But I was constantly, that was my connection to the contractors. I wanted to give them, because we didn't charge for training. So I was letting them know, look, I'm not selling anything. I want to make you better. And then it just started snowballing that I would not have fluff in the house. I didn't let anybody come in there and go, do a dog and pony show. If they did that, they were never invited back into me. And I knew the people I was inviting in well enough to know they were technical driven more so. Now I did get some financial people like FTL and what have you, only because a lot of starter out companies didn't have an outlet of that. Wasn't aware of that. So then I got a call from a friend at Emerson at the time, now Copeland. And he said, hey, I know it's a long shot. He said, there's a training position at Emerson. And I think you'd be good at it, but let me share with you the biggest hurdle where a lot of people quit. He said, you're going to be traveling at minimum 36 to 40 weeks a year. He said, that's just part of the job. And I had paused on that. I started counting up how many weeks there was a year.
Like, wait a minute.
I couldn't even visualize what that looked like. So, but as a territorial sales manager, it wasn't unlike me to be on the road 3 nights a week in a hotel, making calls. So anyways, I waited out I only flew 10 times before that probably, or less than. And I came up and asked my wife and she said, I'm not really seeing you now. I never did as a contractor. You come in late, you leave early, blah, blah, blah. And we've been married so long. It's like, nobody's running away from anybody, So she said, Don, I know you, if you don't take it, you'll regret it the rest of your life. And that's what changed my world. I went to Emerson. I shut my mouth. I listened just like I did as an apprentice. and I had the luck of working out with these guys that were semi-retired. They weren't full-time employees anymore. They were subcontractors, but they had been at Emerson prior to, and they were in their 70s or late 60s. I mean, but they were a wealth of knowledge. Oh, yeah. So I listened, I recorded, I read AE bulletins on the weekend. For the first 2 years, literally, I'm not joking, I was all about Emerson. If I didn't, I had earbuds in my ears, even flying, driving, playing something that I recorded, constantly deep diving. And about 6 or 7, 8 months into it, maybe a year, a couple of the instructors came up to me separately and said, "Man, we're all talking about it. You can't believe how much you've expedited your knowledge. We are blown away." But it was really that dedication is because, and I don't have any hobbies. I really don't have a personal life. So I have a motorcycle, a Harley I drive every once in a while, but it's true. I don't. I'm kind of an introvert in that way. But, so I just kept going, and then people started to retire. So I went. The story I tell is I went from a cubicle to the actual main office of the service, the manager of educational services, which that wasn't my title, by the way. It just happened to be a void. There was a void in that office there, and so I took that, and Emerson has a lot of contractors, and there was no fluff training there. We were tearing down compressors. I was teaching CO2 transcritical systems, supermarket classes, everything from 4 hours, scroll classes, and you're probably familiar with the cost class, the tear downs, the 3-day. We were getting our hands dirty, and I was loving it. And I was taking pictures everywhere. I've always been a LinkedIn guy. I never had a Facebook account until recently. My kids made me get a Facebook account only because they started having grandkids. Our oldest is like 6. So I got on Facebook because they kept getting on me about communication. So anyways, so LinkedIn was my Facebook. So, because I was posting, "Hey, we have a spring tune-up come this spring for $65 as a contractor." I mean, that's how far back I go. But as every position I went to, I always promoted who I worked for or what we were doing. And like marketing started looking at me at Emerson and going, "Hey, we just saw some YouTube videos you did in your office. Would you mind if we Emersize those kind of things?" And so they started calling me into the office doing these professional. Yeah, that's what they said. Say Emersize it, and I said,
"You're like,
sure,
sign here."
So
yeah. We literally like to use your influence network.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I became accidentally very close with the marketing team. They really liked what I was doing, but I didn't really know boundaries, pretty much. You know what I mean? I thought, hey, if I'm flipping hamburgers, I want to be the best hamburger flipper out there, and I want to promote our job. So that really snowballed, and then more of a following came on LinkedIn. Branch managers and owners of wholesalers, for whatever reason, started sending great messages back to the plant in Sydney, Ohio, that, "Hey, man, he's exceptional. He's this or he's that," which I kind of blocked that stuff out. I guess somehow, some way I was resonating with people. I'm blessed to have a way where I can take something as complicated as transcritical CO2 systems and put it in layman's terms, and almost make you feel comfortable about what you're doing, and start with baby steps. You know what I mean? Like the refrigeration cycle and those kind of things. But I did it in the way I like to be taught myself. You know what I mean? You don't do any good for anyone if you speak over somebody. Yeah, you're smart, but what did they get out of it? And it's really not about me. It's about them, right? So my satisfaction is when I know they learned something, and that's all I need to know. It's not about me being, how cool am I? That's not who I am. So anyways, Chemours came along because they knew I was teaching CO2, A2Ls, and TAR 290. Now, this A2Ls I was already teaching in 2016, maybe the bottom of 2015, because that engineering has to take place prior to this A2Ls, you know what I mean? So the compressors have to start engineering it. So then a good friend, Dr. Chuck Allgood, very, very popular in the industry with Chemours, he was a patent on a lot of the Freon products that we used years ago. So anyways, he approached me at an event and waited for the people to leave our booth. I became a booth guy too, by the way. Marketing thought I would be good to be at the booth. They said they were sick and tired of hearing people is Don Gillis here? So I got pulled into that too by accident. Not my strong suit, by the way. But so Chuck approached me and gave me a business card, and it kind of went something like, "Hey, we're looking to bring on an educational services into Chemours, but we've never had one. So we're looking for somebody like what you do, wink, wink, if you know of anybody, give me a call. So I took the card, and I didn't think anything about the wink, wink, because I was happy with where I was at. And I started getting overwhelmed because we were lacking people, and we couldn't find anybody that wanted to move to Sydney, Ohio, travel 40 weeks a year, and was knowledgeable enough to be training what we do. So it was a lot of, hey, we got somebody to interview, but it fell out. You know what I mean? What's their fault? And if you've ever been to Sydney, Ohio, it's a lovely city. Don't get me wrong. But if you live in Florida, you don't want to go to Sydney, Ohio in February. That's not fun, you know? So
You're
they struggled.
recruiting at the best time of year for Ohio.
Yeah.
Like you can't do your recruiting in February.
Yeah. I reached out. A friend of mine who we're talking used to work for them, and now he runs his own business. And we were talking. I said, Matt, so and so. I just happened to mention it. He goes, "Oh man, did you talk to him about it?" I said, "No." He said, "You need to go back there. They take care of you. They're good company." I reached out to Chuck. He said, "Yeah, it's still available," and they were excited. I was excited, and they were telling me all the things I had to do. Like, this A2L is going to take off. It's going to be big. You know, you're going to be in the front of it. And sure enough, I went in. They had, 4 or 5 presentations that were not consistent with everybody across the nation. So my first job was kind of boring. The first 2 months, I sat behind the computer where I'm at now and started building what I call modules and set it up what I'd learned at Copeland. Basically, like, here's a 2-hour course, here's a 4-hour course, here's an 8-hour course. And then I started getting those NATE certified, through NATE and what have you. And I went through all the stuff, and I told them up front, I said, hey, I'll take the job on one condition, and that is I can't just talk about refrigerants. The way I teach, I have to bring in the TXV. I have to bring in the evaporator. I have to make more of it. I don't want it to be boring. I'm not going to, you can't touch and feel chemicals, and that's not, it's nobody wants to sit and listen to that at all. And so I did. And then, of course, I had to work the government stuff in it first, where we're at with the Kigali Amendment, and then this, and finally the AIM Act and what have you. So the CARB from California. So it was a kind of a bouncing ball there for a while in the government. I'm not saying they were, but there was a lot of fear mongering, in my personal opinion. And I was the guy that would come in and say, because I touched equipment and I saw the flammability early at Chemours Labs, and I knew what it was doing. And oh, by the way, my son, my oldest son, is a licensed contractor. So I would never put him in danger. I have a lot of friends and family still in the industry. So I don't, as a contractor, I've always I'm okay with change. You know what I mean? Now, if it was dangerous, I'd be the first one to tell you, but it wasn't. So I had people showing up going, a couple of my employees went to some training about a week ago, and he goes, man, they came back and told me to sell the shop, sell the business. And I heard that repeatedly. Like, people would constantly tell me in that first year, like, man, they're telling us this, or they had been told propane was in it and all this other stuff. And I know that sounds silly now, but that was real world back then. I mean, I was fighting a really battle, and it was, and there wasn't a lot of me's out there at the time. Yeah.
You touch it, you're going to die. This is the end.
Yeah. So, anyways,
they're going to be exploding,
Yeah.
Right. Like,
yeah, exactly. So, with all this junk out there, like mini splits blowing up in a third world country, and people believing that was, and it's not even chemically possible, by the way. In fact, some of the chemical engineers told me that couldn't even be propane, that it was something way, way different than that it was huge. But nevertheless, they were over exaggerating. And unfortunately, some people were out there generating likes, if you will, or followers, if you will, by making it more extravagant, like, let's open up the phone lines kind of thing, I mean? And it was good. It was good drama at the time, but I would never hide anything from anybody. That's just not my nature.
So Don, I want to jump up to so now you're with HARDI. You're a technical trainer for HARDI. I know who HARDI is. They're the supply house, the distribution association.
In fact, we're becoming members. We actually had a conversation with some folks from HARDI 2 days ago.
Last week. Brandon and Zachary, and I talked to Alex at the AHR. Yeah, we talked to the AHR. So, but tell us a little about HARDI, what they do, like and then what you're doing as a technical trainer for HARDI.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thanks for slowing me down, Les. I had 2 cups of coffee this morning, so that could have went really ugly. No, but seriously, all I knew about HARDI, quite honestly, at the beginning was the government stuff, the federal stuff, the state stuff. That's where I knew. When I think of HARDI, I thought about, they're the ones that do the blast out, like, we're representing you at Capitol Hill and that kind of thing. That's all I really knew. And then the people that interviewed me, the CEO and now my boss, interviewed me, and they kind of brought me up to par. So what they asked is they were getting a big ask of getting their counter sales. Because like contractors, you see the shortage out there we're having and have had for some time. Well, the counter sales people are the same way. As I said earlier before the broadcast, there's a lack of knowledge. And what I kept hearing over and over, we're hiring people from Menards, Lowe's, Chick-fil-A, all and everything in between. So I took my 25 years in the truck, there's 2 global companies that I traveled with, and then everything else I learned that I failed at, that I, mistakes that I made, and kind of blended it all in one. I tried to picture, plus I sent out a blast out to get feedback on where do you see the biggest growing pains. To my surprise, quite a few of it came back as airflow. So that was really cool to jump out at me. But so that was my job, the first job. So that just got completed about a month or so ago. I've been working on this pretty in depth. It takes a while to start with nothing and build that whole program up, because it's a heavy lift. It's not just me, it's people in the front end. We have a online prerequisite, and then we have a 2-day in person, then we have a post requisite, and then we have a webinar. And they told me, this is yours. So in my head, I was thinking, if it fails, I'm going to fail the way I want to fail. If it succeeds, we'll all take credit for it. So I'm doing it the way I want to do it. And they've been real nice about letting me do that. So, but back to HARDI, they have all these online courses. It's kind of like a HARDI university, if you will. So you can go on there if you're a HARDI member, and it is focused on distribution. Now we work with OEMs too. They're HARDI members too, but it's focused mainly on distribution. And basically, you, as a member, you can go on there, and there's certain things that come free, and there's certain things that are like a cafeteria plan. Like if you want to take a class, maybe it's $25 to take this A2L training, whatever. So they have this whole library of thing. It's called Heat U, and you go to hardi.com and see Heat U, and you'll open up there if you have an account, and you go in there and just kind of pick and choose what you want to do. You can learn the latest stuff, which they do a good job of blasting out, but everything from sales training, they had a lot of soft skill stuff, if you will, the in-person stuff. There was no really technical. Some of the technical stuff was an A2L training that was built online. There was a couple other things, but it didn't really go in depth. So they brought me on to be the technical advisor, and I'd never been a technical advisor before. So, so anyways, that's what I brought to. Yeah. So on the side note, I've been learning a lot. You know what I mean? I've been learning a lot from them. I've got some really talented people. I'm not just saying that. Probably the most talented group I've been around as far as in the marketing side of things, and the training, and the, what do they call them? The graphics and stuff, the people that make it look magic. Like one of my partners, she watched a video of mine on YouTube, and it was about the compression ratio, I think it was. And 15 minutes later, she literally sends me this email back with a link, and I play it. I love AI. But it's a video of me, and it looks like me. It's an animated character that looks like me. I'm in front of that same grease board, but it's animated, and it's my voice. And I'm walking through it with a grease pen on the board doing the compression ratio. And for me, being a month into my job, that was like mind-blowing. Like we just landed on the moon. You know what I mean? So I go, God, you're talented. I said, we're going to knock it out of the park. So that was my first project. We just released the link 2 or 3 weeks ago. The class is almost full. We have a public in Columbus, Ohio. So we have public and private. So private will be like what I used to do for everyone. And that seems to be the more popular one right now. You buy the class and then fill the seats kind of thing. That's what we did at Emerson. We didn't charge at Comores. I had just set up a way to charge as I was out the door, because we should have been charging from day one. But nevertheless, they've already got that part already engaged. They're very good at that. So all I had to do was put pencil to paper and bring it all together. And so that's going to be a 2-hour prerequisite, 2 in person. And it's not going to be a give me. I visioned our Copeland technical specialist back in the Emerson days, and it's going to be a lot of quizzes, checks and balances. And at the very end, I really stressed the importance of having a test that was really challenging. I don't want to, check these boxes. Did you have a good time? Was the instructor good? It's not going to be like that. It's, I hated sending technicians to late night classes, especially when we're working 12 hours already, and come to find out the next morning that was a dog and pony show. It drove me nuts. I just don't like fluff. I visualize that person, and I think you guys would too. They go back, they fly back to California, and they go, it was really good. And that person that sent them to us, I'll send Bill now too. And that's how you build the business, in my opinion. Put out good quality stuff that brings value to them, right? I think to me, it's common sense. You know what I mean? I'm not selling next year's model. I'm selling this right now that when your boots hit the ground tomorrow, you know how to talk. You know what I mean?
So when you're booking these classes with HARDI, who's taking this class? Is it you doing it at the supply house for contractors? Are supply houses booking classes with you specifically? Is there a combination of those two things? Did I miss something in there?
Well, you said it was counter guys, right? Mostly.
Yeah, it is. It's counter guys, but Les, you brought up a good point. It's not just distributors. So this morning we had 4 sign-ups. She reached out to me directly, very high up person. So a lot of OEMs are signing up, and that one just came in hot this morning. So that was 4 more seats that got taken up. But so they have satellite branches and different things, and they want training too. So some of them don't have any kind of field experience at all. The first day is really fundamental. Like, how does a TXV work? You know what I mean? How does it work? It's really about, if you've seen my video, it's really about having a better conversation with the counter. It's really about someone saying something like subcooling or superheating. Obviously, they should know that, and not be lost. Not know where you take that reading even at, because if you say something silly, you're kind of a fake. You really can't. You lose your integrity or your person's. My rule is, if I don't know anything about it, just be upfront about it. So getting back to your original question, reaching out, it's been distributors, and we have an annual conference you may be aware of, and a lot of the leads came from there. So it took me about a month or 2 just to go through that. Keep in mind, I'm still building this airplane while we're flying it, right? And it was back to that salesman position that I told you, where the phone run ringing for the last month or so, that really had me concerned. Until I see those seats filled, that's just who I am. Because I know in my heart, or I feel I know in my heart, that once people start to take this training and they see what they're going to get out of it, then it's going to sell itself. So that's my first ask. And so people that are decision makers, let's say owners or CEOs of those distributors, like where they have 12 branches or 22 branches, they're reaching out and going, hey, we'd like to have a call. And some of them, when the storyboard was up, before we actually built it all the way out and finished it and took it to print to a book, because they're going to get a biggie book to follow along with, to take a lot of notes with them. And obviously, again, that goes back to, it's not a give me. You're here to learn something, not here to go out to eat. You're here to learn something, So I had to run that by them. And then I picked their brain. Like, if they saw something like, not one size fits all. So I ran that by them. And so far, guys, it was like, man, this is great. Even friends of mine would you could hear them murmur, and they're not playing poker because they haven't even asked what the price is yet. So they're showing it right away, like, Don, this is exactly what we need. So let's follow up on it. So it's been great there. So, but again, now the seats are starting to fill up, and now we're getting orders for, what about a tech support training? And what about if he came in and did training at our branch? We controlled the people in the seats, contractors, and you had a flat rate to do this. And then the latest and greatest, and this one's going to go right now because it's already sold, that we didn't see coming, was, instead of them sending it to Columbus, Ohio, the public, where you can send 1, 2, 3, and we fill the class up to 20, or you can bring it to you at your branch and fill as many as you want, and that's a flat rate. Now we're getting, as people started to listen to me and we started talking, they're going, what if we brought him here and trained 10 of our guys and girls, and then they went out internally? So now we put, I went through recently, and it wasn't that bad of a lift. I did it on the weekend as much as I could because it was a lot of work. But I went through and made sure we had good notes in the PowerPoints, good instructional notes. I treated it as, okay, somebody that's reading this from a podium, make sure they have some key questions to ask and with this thing. So I had to do that, get that involved. And then we have to get it to print, and then we have to get the rights to it, the IP, if you will. So that came out of almost nowhere, but it's been a big demand right now. So we have a lot of different options there. So I don't know when I'm going to get to the tech support one, because this is really, I think it's going to do well. I really do. People have reached out to me when they saw my flyer online. They went, Don, can you get me a PDF of this? And I knew it as a contractor, like old Bill that used to be here 10 years ago, man, you could ask him anything. And now Joe's here, and Joe's a real nice guy, and I don't like to be mean to people, but I have friends and coworkers, like, they wouldn't tolerate it. They'd hear somebody's voice go, no, I'm called back later. That's not the guy I wanted. So anyways.
So for HARDI, this is a new way to connect and invest in the industry, because overall, in order for their network to win, the contractors have to win, which means the contractors have to be equipped, which means they have to have skill sets at the counter, right?
That can
and
actually
then the
help
supply
them win.
houses that
Yeah.
can help them win. So this is like Hardy's looking at is an investment into their industry, right? The industry, if you will.
Yeah. And well put, Les. And that's what I learned when I got here. It's really about how can we bring value, because it's not a give me membership,
Right.
There's a cost to that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so Hardy wants to give. So when you start to hear like evaluations, like it'd be nice if you had this or had that or had that. So these were asked originally from the customer, whether it be OEM or distributor, because they were seeing it at the counter where they were losing customers because down the street, because they have all these new employees. Or the other thing was that I didn't see coming was Joe's been at the counter for 20 years and he's threatening to leave if we don't give him a outside sales position. He wants to be promoted and we don't have nobody to backfill him.
Yeah.
So we're bringing a guy in from Menards or a girl in from Lowe's, and we need them to get the grasp of something right away so they can have better conversations. So
otherwise people are going to call up and Joe's not going to be on the phone. They're going to go click.
Never mind. Yep.
Yeah. Well, he's working for that other company. Oh, I'll call there.
I'll go over there.
Yeah. So, we're all selling lemonade, but I'm putting ice in mine. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're wrapping up. We're coming up on time. Any nugget you want to leave with us before we wrap up? Like industry knowledge, I don't know, predictions, I don't know, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, predictions, I would say it's been my prediction for 2 or 3 years now. As much as you can learn about inverter technology on the technical side, get in there. Whatever training, whether it's me or someone else, get in there and learn it, because that's where the future's going. And the A2L thing's already out. That genie's out of the bottle. That's here. I don't think there's a lot of share there. We need to promote the trades, do a better job of that. Personally, I'd like to see OEMs, and this has been a dream of mine for about 10 years now. I'd like to see the OEMs make some kind of investment into getting more people in the field. And I'm not sure exactly what that looks like. I know there's a company or organization, Right Tech out there. And what they do is they take people out of the military. And I think a big OEM is sponsoring or part of it. And they take military people that get ready to go out that has never done anything else but out of high school, but 20 years in the military. And they don't want them just, what am I going to do with myself now?
Right.
So they're teaching them. And it's a pretty tough boot camp. I mean, it's like, if you don't show up one day, you're out. And it's very hard to get picked to be in that program. Really, really love that. And I think more people ought to start using that footprint. You know what I mean? I mean, they've made a lot of money on contractors, and we all have. It's a great industry. Don't get me wrong, but we need to put some more skin in the game in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great
That's
insight.
awesome. All right. Well, Don, we're going to have to get you back on again. I had a bunch of questions that I wanted to get to. We're going to have to do it another time because we're out of time. So
should I not drink coffee next time?
No, it was great.
No, he just needs to learn how to jump in.
Yeah, no, I wanted to hear. So I wasn't going to interrupt you. You were on the roll. It's fantastic. And a lot of what we're trying to do on Chill is bring people on and let them be, let people see the face of the industry and the people who are actually moving the needle in the background. I think, guys are out there busting their butt, working hard, and it's always feels like it's big corporate. Oh, HARDI did this, or so and so did that, or whatever. And it's like, you know what? Let's get you to meet these people. You've had the bloody knuckles and the greasy fingers and all the stuff because you've been in the field and actually done the work. Yeah, and I think that's important for people to understand that the future is bright for folks entering the industry, and there's a lot of opportunity. And so
absolutely,
it doesn't stop with, I got my first van and that's it. That's where I'm going to, if that's what you want, that's great. But there's a lot of runway in this industry. So. Yep. Awesome. Yes. Well, thank you for joining us, Don. I'm Adam with Chill Under Pressure.
I'm Les.
I'm Don. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Welcome. Catch you next time.